And hello again from WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Josh Manning, Deputy Managing Editor for Assignment here at the Western Journal. Joining me on WJ Live today is Tara Snyder, intern, soon to be promoted to full-time employee. And joining me from the other side of the country somewhere, I'm not sure which side, is our roving reporter and correspondent, Cameron Arcand. Cameron, welcome.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you and welcome you for joining us today on Friday. Thank you for wrapping up your work week with WJ Live. We're going to give you some great content this afternoon, as I hope we always do. We've got three pieces we want to talk with you about. We will be talking about Kamala Harris taking a significant tumble in the polls. Her approval rating is terrible. That's going to be coming up in just a minute. We're also going to, that's coming from Tara. Cameron will be talking with us about the eviction moratorium or lack of a moratorium and what that means. But first off, I'm going to kick us off with a quick discussion about the Capitol Police officers who were involved in the incursion and some information out of Chicago. Now, as you know, another police officer, as you may know, another police officer who was involved in the incursion, a Capitol police officer, has committed suicide, and that is tragic. A lot of people, especially on the left, are pointing the finger at Trump supporters and at conservatives and at Republicans, saying, look, really, you're to blame for this. You guys are the ones who fomented an insurrection and apparently tried to take over the country. It's not clear that anybody tried to take over the country, but they're saying that it is that is evidence that these people committed suicide, and it is the responsibility can be laid on Trump. However, we have police officers coming out and disputing that right now. There was a very interesting piece in the Daily Mail earlier today talking about Sergeant Betsy Bratner Smith. Betsy Bratner Smith is the spokesperson for the National Police Association. And she says that police suicides are actually a wider matter. She says she and other cops have, and I'm quoting from the Mail right now, have become disgusted with how Democrats in Washington and, quote, the media have politicized the deaths of the Capitol officers who have committed suicide, 4 officers who responded to the riot and have since killed themselves. According to Bratner Smith, the mental health of police officers around the country is reaching a boiling point after relentless vilification by the public and the media in the wake of George Floyd's death. She says there are prominent Democrats only focusing on January 6th, and those officers involved and prominent Republicans who are saying nothing. They say they back the blue, but they're not doing a good job of it. Ultimately, I have to blame the American media. The American media is not telling the truth about American law enforcement. The American media since Ferguson on. I've talked to the media every day. They have constantly vilified and lied about American law enforcement. So you can couple this with a story now out of Chicago about increasing numbers of Chicago police officers retiring, and even retiring early before they can qualify for their pensions. So they're losing potentially years and years worth of investment in their pension program just to get out. In just the first 6 months of the year, 367 officers have retired. CBS 2 in Chicago spoke to a recently retired officer who gave some insight into the rising numbers. That officer said, "People see us as the enemy, and we're not. All we're doing is trying to help the people of the community, the city of Chicago." So, Tara, it seems to me then that it's really kind of cheap political publicity for the left to come out and say, oh, look, these people were heroes at the Capitol, and now 4 of them have killed themselves. Let's blame Trump. It's really, really cheap to say that after they've spent over a year just raking police over the coals every chance they get. What do you think?
It is absolutely ridiculous just how the narrative overall the left has changed it just time and time again, because they ultimately want to appease the most amount of people. And we saw after the death of George Floyd that it was all cops are bad, the system needs to be defunded, we need to completely start over. And then they kind of realized that that was a losing narrative going into 2022 and thinking about being reelected. Yeah. And they're backing away from it. And now that they are done using those police officers at the Capitol as political tools, they're tossing them aside again, and they're not actually caring about what implications all of this media coverage and all of this attention has brought to them. Because I assure you that those officers were not expecting to become centerpieces at this media firestorm.
Yeah. Cameron, you've been arrested at the Capitol several times in the past. Not really. But Cameron, we've spent a lot of time talking about this. What is your take on the media's assessment of these suicides?
Well, it's a tough time to be a cop in America right now. And I think what the media did kind of starting last summer was they validated, whether intentionally or not intentionally, the most extreme solutions to policing and criminal justice reform that were out there. Now, there were a lot of people who were saying, let's reform the system. Let's not tear down the system and build up some social justice buzzword type of police force. That's not what the majority of people were saying, but the media was complicit in equipping the most extreme voices and validating what they were saying. Now, I'll say this too, is that we're going to start seeing issues, and we're already seeing it in major cities, where the crime is rising and there is nobody that actually wants to step up to the plate because they're so concerned about actually going into the own community that they serve. We saw this in Portland. They recreated their gun violence prevention team. They rebranded it to make it seem something more left friendly. And only 4 out of the 14 slots needed have actually been filled because no one in that police department wants to do that job. So what we're going to be seeing is we're going to see a lot of kind of the center left who kind of went along and validated a lot of what their more extreme people were saying. We're going to see them eating a lot of crow come 2022, come 2024, when we're seeing high rising crime in places like Portland and New York and Chicago, where we're seeing the consequences of what defunding, not reforming, what full-on defunding and vilifying the police does.
So that's a great take on that, Cameron. I want to follow up with you on it. We remember right after November 3rd, there were all of these discussions. Well, there was that leaked Democrat conference call where people were complaining and saying, look, we have got to get away from this defund movement. It is absolutely destroying us. And we did see them back off of it a little bit. But to the points you just made, it seems to still be a fairly strong movement. Do you think it's going to pick up steam going into 2022?
Probably not in competitive legislative districts, I'll say that. I think you're going to see a lot of moderate Democrats pushing very, very hard to be like, oh no, we don't want to actually defund the police. But then you have people like Cori Bush saying in the same sentence yesterday, not only do we want to defund the police, I need my own private security because I'm more important than the rest of you. With my $200,000 a year plus salary, I am better than the rest of you. I can get my own private security because I think the private sector does a better job and we should defund the police. Now, I didn't know Cori Bush was such a big libertarian, but I do know this. She is a hypocrite, and we're going to see a lot of this issue of these competitive candidates in these districts distancing themselves away from people like Cori Bush who are saying things like this, because this is not what suburbs want. This is not what suburban parents, this is not what suburban students, this is not what anybody living in any area outside of these cities actually wants. And then you have people in these big cities regretting it immediately after. They're wondering, oh, well, we just went out and protested to defund the police. Why is there shootings every week in DC? in my neighborhood that I'm paying $2,500 a month for? Why was there a shooting at the Washington Nationals game? People are going to finally start asking themselves these questions, but they're not actually going to wake up to the fact as to the reason why.
So, Tara, what explains then this idea that people like Cori Bush, she has her own private security force. Nancy Pelosi has her own big, beautiful wall. What explains this double standard that we continue to see between the politically powerful left and the rest of us, the poor little plebs who are left out there with defunded police departments, et cetera? Quickly.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to two things. Number one is people probably run for Congress with the idea that they're going to be the new person in Congress who understands what it's like to be the person at home, who understands what it's like to live the American dream and whatever. But that all changes as soon as you go viral on Twitter. You start to get a following. You start to be enthralled in the AOC squad. And I think that ultimately clouds her judgment. And I think that can happen on the Republican side, too. But I just don't think that it's been seen on the same level that it happens on the Democratic side, because that's the only way in my mind that you can have a $200,000 security detail and just think, you know what, we're going to defend the police overall.
Yeah. Cameron, shifting gears now to the eviction moratorium. For forever, you've been able in this country, you've been able to kick people out who don't pay their rent. Then COVID hit and you couldn't do it. Then the moratorium expired and the president said he didn't have the power to extend it. Then the next day he said, oh, heck, I do have the power to extend it. Tell us what is going on with the eviction moratorium.
Well, for starters, a lot of Democrats are now having this misconception that landlords are all wearing a top hat, smoking a cigar, and walking around with a cane. And they don't understand that landlords are people too. Now, kind of using that as a jumping point, last year, we had the CDC sign and authorize an eviction moratorium, which basically said that if you're not paying your rent or if there's some sort of other issue, your landlord can't throw you out of your apartment or house or wherever. Now, this was set to expire, and then they reissued it. President Biden reissued it after pushes from far left Democrats like AOC and Cori Bush. And the issue that we saw with this was the fact that it wasn't constitutional to start with. The executive branch did not have the power to authorize something like this on the federal level. Now, we're seeing a county in Ohio in particular fight back against this. It was the Franklin County Municipal Court, which is kind of more towards the Cincinnati area. They were saying that because they did not have the authority, they struck this down, and they said, if you're a landlord in our area, you can go ahead and you can evict these people. Now, to make matters even worse, we had President Joe Biden basically admitting that this was legally shady. I think we have a video or a tweet right now kind of going into what he said about this. He said, I can't guarantee you that the court won't rule that we don't have the authority, but at least we'll have the ability to. If we have to appeal to keep this going for a month at least, I hope longer.
So who cares if we break the law as long as we get what we want?
Exactly. The President of the United States is openly admitting to doing something legally questionable, but he doesn't seem to care about that right now. So I want to bring that to you guys. Do you think that the Supreme Court will strike this down?
Yeah, I think so. It's unfathomable to me how the executive branch itself, but the CDC in particular, is going to wade into financial and property rights issues just on the weight of their name and the fiat that goes with that. I don't think there's any way that will stand. If it does stand, it means that essentially private property, as we've noted in the U.S., is over, because you don't really own something if you can't control it, if you can't say what happens on it, if you can't say who uses it and who doesn't use it. You don't really own it in any real sense, though your name may be on a deed. Essentially, at that point, the state owns it, and what this will do is effectively nationalize at least part of the private real estate market in the United States, which is unbelievable. And by the way, I think this is actually the real problem behind the lack of employment out there right now. You know, a couple of $3,000 checks from Biden, you know, those aren't going to get you just that far in life. Life is more expensive than that. But what will help you a long way is if you've got a home, if you have a roof over your head, but you don't have to pay rent at all. You know, rent, mortgage payments, those are the most expensive parts of most of our budgets. If you don't have to pay that and there's no risk of getting kicked out when you don't, then, you know, you can go a long time on unemployment and a long time on food stamps and be perfectly fine. I think that's why Denny's down the street absolutely can't get people to work there. I think that's why when I go to Starbucks in the morning, sometimes they don't have the muffin I want because they don't have people in the warehouse to deliver them. So I think the Supreme Court will strike this down. I also think it's a massive threat to private property, and on top of that, it's probably what's behind the dearth of employment happening right now. What do you think, Tara?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a bunch of different issues, but just to even go off of that even more, beyond the eviction moratorium, which I think you're right, rent plays the largest role in that. Ilhan Omar just this week or last week introduced legislation to have a monthly check for $1,600 or something crazy like that, and $600 for your child. And so people who are saying that this is all because of COVID and all of this stuff, these are not unprecedented times anymore. It's actually probably completely precedented because we've been living in it for a year and a half. If
Spanish flu.
You have no excuse to say, oh, I didn't see this coming, I didn't know what was happening. There's absolutely no excuse anymore. People need to be adults and get themselves together and realize that they're responsible for themselves and that the government isn't going to be the one who's responsible for you your entire life.
And you're right on the money with that. There are, I think, somewhere around 10 million open jobs right now. I don't really see, unless you are so immunocompromised or whatever the deal is right now that's keeping someone from working. What is the excuse not to work right now? There is so little of an excuse right now not to work where you can go to pretty much any restaurant and retail store and they have a now hiring sign up. So I think you're right on with that. But do you guys think that doing this even originally when it was considered unprecedented times, do you think that was appropriate then, or do you think just fully on principle this should have never happened?
I will say that I think that there should have been a way more detailed vetting process for the people who did receive money, because I know people in my personal life who are receiving checks and were going, I didn't need this, and ended up donating them to charity and things like that. And good for those people for doing that. I don't know necessarily if I'll say that one way or the other it shouldn't have happened at all, because I do think that there can be some instances like small businesses and things to that extent. However, I do think that it did create an unhelpful precedent for American society, because I know that other college students were ecstatic at receiving $1,000 or so, because in college that did a lot of great things for you, but you also didn't have any chance of probably seriously being injured, becoming ill, or anything like that. And so I think that there are some benefits, but I think that the costs dramatically outweigh any of the benefits that would have happened. What do you think, Josh?
I don't think we would have had to do this had the federal government not had federal and state governments not intervened in the first at first and shut down the economy. There was no reason why people couldn't continue to go to work. There was no reason why people couldn't continue to earn a living. But as happens so often with government intervention, they intervened in one place, tried to shut things down to stop the spread, and that caused unemployment to skyrocket. It caused people to cut paychecks, and so all of a sudden people can't afford rent, and it's not their fault. It's the fault of the federal government and the state governments for how they bungled dealing with COVID. So then the federal government has to come in on the back end and say, well, we screwed that up. Now a bunch of people are going to get evicted. Well, gosh, I guess we better tell them, we better set things such that they can't get evicted. Now, what that does is that causes the people who are property owners. And by the way, if you're renting a house, you're probably not renting it from George Soros. You're probably renting it from somebody who lives one street over from you or one neighborhood over from you. There are lots of people who have their own rent homes, and they're essentially the same class as the people renting them.
Yeah, I do.
And they've got bills to pay too.
I think it's a really important point to note that it is kind of a government-created disaster.
Yeah,
because
it is.
had we just worked through
100%.
COVID, it would have been difficult because, yes, there was a virus and we weren't sure how deadly it was at that time. But when you shut down the entire economy for 2 solid weeks and then 2 months, a year, 6 months, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and then we've got to move on here, and then did the stupidest thing possible, which was try to isolate and quarantine the healthy, and all that did was give the sick and those who are most at danger from the disease a little bit of false security that they could go out there. Well, people are wearing masks, they're rubbing everything down. I guess I can kind of go out and chance it and stuff. Those are the people who should have been quarantined while the rest of us went about our business, kept the economy going, and provided a way to give charitably to these people. The economy lost trillions of dollars, and there's no telling how much of that we actually could have used to help those who needed it, and certainly including those who are in nursing homes who people like Andrew Cuomo killed. So that is good. That's good discussion, Cameron. Tara, I want you to take it away on Kamala. You noticed something with her approval ratings recently, and I know you even have a special graphic for us.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to us.
So at least she has 100% disapproval in our office, but America more broadly, she's only sitting at a 44% approval rating across America, which is really bad because since February, this has gone down 13%, which is a really drastic nosedive. And the last time a vice president was this unpopular was back in 1970. So I guess you could call Kamala a new Y2K record breaker, which is great for her if she wants to have something on her resume. But the main thing here is she's actually blaming her predicament not on her lack of policy, not on her lack of charisma. No. She's blaming sexism. And so her entire staff is absolutely panicking right now, going, oh my gosh, how do we cover this? How do we change it? And so what they're doing is they're blaming the media. And I think that is just hilarious, considering that when Trump had any gripes with the media, that it was this, oh, you're out to get them, oh, you're out to do this, but now it's for feminism.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, we do have a clip for you guys to watch. The View covered this yesterday, and of course, it was a disaster as usual.
Well, let's see. What is different about her that we haven't seen before? What could it be? Oh, that's right. She's a woman and she's black. I almost forgot.
Rising?
Well, it's not surprising because it is all about race and gender, right? As Joy mentioned, what's different about this one? What is different about this particular vice president? Listen, she's become, I think, the GOP foil on the campaign trail. There's a lot of faux outrage out there.
So, of course, because they're all a bunch of leftists, that their first thing that comes to their mind is gender and race. How ridiculous do you think that is, Josh?
No more ridiculous than you would expect from The View and people on the left absolutely every day. It is truly hilarious to listen to the people who see nothing but skin color, sexual orientation, gendered mental status, whatever we're going to end up calling transgenderism as it manifests in the mind. They see nothing but that, and all that is a throwback to just traditional Marxism. Instead of a class struggle, now they've created a race struggle, they've created a sex struggle, and that's all it is. They really are the ones who see race. The conservatives, the best I can tell, and I've been involved in the conservative movement my entire life, the best I can tell, conservatives really do want everyone to do better. And want the market to sort out who does better. They want the people who do the best to rise to the top, and they recognize that a rising tide raises all ships, whatever that expression is. Anyway, the left, however, they are interested in pitting people against each other and really trying to get people to go at it with each other to, I think, distract people from really the accretion of power at the top, which is what leftism is all about. It's also hard to say this after, the media has no room to talk about this after what they did to Sarah Palin. They just destroyed her day after day after day. There are still lies about Sarah Palin that are accepted as truths because of things that were said on Saturday Night Live, 15 years ago, or however, 13 years ago. So it's they have no room to talk about this. It's their game, though. It's their playbook. It's what you expect from them.
Oh, yeah. And just to go back to when Kamala was campaigning, when she ran for president, she dropped out of the race really early. And so I have this from Politico. A sharp rise in the polls did not last long, with Harris skidding into 5th place and registering in the single digits by September. When she dropped out Tuesday, her Real Clear Politics national polling average was hovering above 3%. So even when she was on her own, she just wasn't a likable candidate. And again, she was running against all of these leftists. And
Tara, what I want to know is why all of those sexist Democrats who didn't approve of her, the 97.5% of Democrats who didn't love on her, why are they getting off easy? That's what I want to know. But that question will never be answered.
Oh, yeah, of course it won't be. No problem. Anyways, I actually happened to get some exclusive footage from Kamala Harris's campaign, because what they actually did when they were branding her was just rebranding an even less likable Hillary Clinton, and you can see that here.
It's a bold move.
This
Exclusive video here, folks.
and give you
A princess.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, she just popped right up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, completely rebranded, just as Kamala. So
That is horrifying.
Yeah,
That is
absolutely.
absolutely horrifying. Yeah, the thing they don't want to accept is that she is supremely unlikable and an unbelievable hypocrite. If you want to look at somebody who has, according to the left standards, done really badly by African Americans, it's Kamala. She had no problem throwing African Americans in jail left and right. But all of a sudden she runs for office and she's untouchable, and she's their great hope. It's absurd.
Oh yeah, Cade, what are your thoughts?
And then even
Or
yeah,
Cameron, what are
even
your
kind of
thoughts?
building off of that, if they kind of want to start an issue with why Kamala Harris has such low approval ratings, I'll give them a reason, a policy reason: the border. She was put in charge to help do certain things with the border. What has she done? Nothing. She went on a vanity trip to El Paso. She went to Guatemala. She said, "Oh, I've never been to Europe," when asking if she would go and visit the border a few months back. She has done absolutely nothing to improve the quality of this country. And that's why her approval ratings are so low. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a reflection on the administration as a whole. But I think the biggest issue with Kamala Harris is the fact that I think Kamala Harris is more deliberate in her actions.
She's very calculating.
She's very calculated.
More willful in her ignorance
Oh yeah,
with
there's
how
a
she handles policy mistakes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think Joe Biden, I gotta cut him some slack with his age and just certain things. I think there's a lot of his gaffes can kind of be more questionable. But with Kamala Harris, she knows what she's doing. She's playing politics. She's very, very alert with everything she's doing, and Americans can see right through it.
Yeah, I mean, she clearly knows what her long game is, because she wants to be a politician, but she can't answer any questions that are asked of her. And just to be super helpful, I have made a collection of my favorite Kamala Harris gaffes, and so we can bring that up because it just proves how dislikable she truly is.
Repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait,
I'm speaking.
the important is you said the truth.
If you don't mind letting me finish,
It's the
we
crazy
can have a
smile.
conversation, okay?
Have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't. Look at my bus! Oh my God, I love it! Oh wow! Look at the bus!
She has the same energy as like when Hillary said, "Pokemon, go to the polls." And can you imagine if on our show we talked to you like this?
It's like a 4-year-old.
Like this, like the crazy look. It would just be absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I'm curious about something, and we can wrap up on this question. Cameron, if the election were held next Tuesday, if 2024 rolled around next Tuesday, what in the world would the Biden-Harris administration run on?
They're not Trump. That's all they have. That's all they still have. That is still to this day, that is their strategy. They are opposition. They still think, oh, because we are not the last administration, people still have not gotten over the fact that Trump is not the president anymore. Whether they are on the pro side, whether they supported him or are against him, they haven't moved on yet. They haven't moved on. We have not moved on as a country yet. So if the election were held next Tuesday, they would still run on the fact that they are not the last administration. And let's say the opponent was DeSantis, they would still say the same
They'll run
thing.
against
They
Trump.
would just conflate the two.
It'll never end.
They would conflate the two.
All right,
It is always going to be about it.
All right, quickly, Tara, you get the last word. What would they run on? Do they have anything?
They have absolutely nothing, so it's probably going to be something that we're the party of acceptance, as usual. Oh, we're doing this thing, and oh, there was an insurrection on the Capitol. I actually think the insurrection would be the main thing that they hit on, because they'll go on, oh, since the Civil War, this has never happened, and these are people dangerous maniacs, and that would be what it is.
Yeah. I think that's it. They have no accomplishments to run on, and hopefully it stays that way. Okay, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Cameron, thanks for... Where are you, Cameron?
I'm in Nashville.
You're in
right
Nashville.
now.
All right. The heart of country music. I know those are your people, Cameron. Thank you for being with us today. Tara, thanks for being here. You who are watching, thank you so much for wrapping up your week with us on WJ Live. We appreciate it. Be sure to click the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. After you click that, a little bell is going to show up. Click that bell so you'll get notified every time we go live. Also, if you feel led to support us in a more direct way, you can always go to westernjournal.com/join. That's westernjournal.com/join. There are ways there you can partner with us to help fund the very expensive journalism that we do here, but we provide you for free because we feel like we're led to do it. We don't have a billionaire backing us. We're a family-owned company. And if you feel God leading you in that direction, we would love your help. If you don't, though, just please continue to read and watch. We appreciate you being with us. All right, so for Cameron, for Tara, for everybody in the booth, everybody at WJ, I'm Josh Manning. This is WJ Live. We'll be back next week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you Monday. Thanks. Man, your whole media stuff is great.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
Nice. Well, I mean, you just...